We are beyond the future. We are beyond the norm. We are beyond the eye.
You might need a telescope. Doesn't matter whether your talents are from far or close by. We are beyond the eyes.
Welcome to Long on Story. We've been talking about our journey on why we are long on story here in the African continent. Well, there's been a great story going about recently. That was Netflix and Paramount's bidding war for Warner Brothers. Now, maybe take a little step back. Warner Brothers was started by four brothers, Albert, Sam, Harry, and Jack, in 1903. And they just started distributing what were motion pictures in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Don't worry about the locations. The story gets more interesting. By 1923, they are formally incorporated. That means formed into a business that they can start selling shares to other people about it. They become Warner Bros. Studios. And from then on, they're not just distributing moving pictures, but they're actually also making moving pictures. Well, almost 100 years later, after making movies for that long and some TV, Netflix bids $83 billion for Warner Bros. And Paramount Global bids $110 billion. That is the value of one studio in America who decided to tell their own stories. I think that stories on the African continent are the greatest unmined resource that we have. What would it look like 100 years from today if we started building a studio model as a business model rather than the existing business model? Now you may ask, what is the existing business model? The existing business model, at least on the South African part of the continent, is we depend solely on grants. So the National Film and Video Foundation puts out a call to say, hey, who wants to make a movie? We have a budget. Here's the cycle. Pitch to us. If you're lucky enough, you get agreed that you can develop your story and we will fund that. They give you a small amount of money and say, go make this movie based off of this criteria. The only difficult thing about that criteria is it has no care in the world whether that movie can make money. That's all good and well for that story, but the challenge with that is that it is not a repeatable model. What happens if you need to make a story the following year? You might not be as lucky next year. It might take you 10 more years. We at Beyond the Eyes have made 2 movies and we have never been funded by the National Film and Video Foundation. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of our friends have been funded. All I'm trying to show you is you cannot build a good business model with a grant financing model. Even as we speak currently, the National Film and Video Foundation are looking for a new chief executive. They've been going through a lot of chief executives. It's just a very difficult business model to make work. And one thing for sure, it hasn't been bid for $110 billion. We do have other models. We have recently seen Blue House Studios, which made Call of My Life, which has really done well in Nigeria. They've made about 8 million rands, according to South African rands, but over 600 and something million naira in Nigerian currency. That is pretty impressive. And it shows you that Africa is long on story. Now, your question may be, so Sam, why do you think the studio model would work well on the continent? Well, for a few reasons. Reason number 1, we've got Cape Town Film Studios, which brings upon the other part of what we're trying to dovetail here at Beyond the Eyes, which is the intellectual property and the real estate property. To build studios, you need real estate. Cape Town Film Studios has the real estate side of things. The problem or challenge with Cape Town Real Studios is it's booked out till 2028 last I checked with stories that want to be told, but none of them are intellectual property from the African continent. And that means that as long as the real estate is needed, Cape Town Film Studios will continue to guarantee work for its crew and a limited amount of its cast. But it will not grow African intellectual property. But we're grateful for the Cape Town Film Studio because it means we have high quality crew on the continent. Then you have the other side of it, Blue House in a very small way, but known associates in a bit of a bigger way, who have shown a bit of more slates of films that have been shown on the continent, growing intellectual property and giving intellectual property on the African continent a chance to grow. Now, as excited as you hear me being about Blue House and Known Associates, recent news came out that Known Associates might be setting up in Europe. Now that's great for Known Associates, but it still doesn't answer the question, can this business model work on the African continent? We believe that it can. I think it just depends on how you dovetail this real estate with the intellectual property. So even now, as we sit and speak, there is an unmined resource on the continent that the Berlin conference had nothing that they knew about. It's been over 100 years since Africa was scrambled for and different people came for other resources. The one resource they never touched is our stories. I think we can really go out and tell our stories to the world in a way that can bring great revenue for this continent and ensure that investors can reinvest in our industry. Film can be an alternative asset class. Let's make it that. Long on story.